Please welcome Stephen and Charlotte Jones of the Dallas Cowboys with Gerry Cardinale of RedBird Capital.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
This is very exciting.
I think they photoshopped mine. That looks better. I'll go back then.
I think we're going to start with a little video. Everybody knows who this illustrious group is here, but why don't we start with a video to sort of set things going?
Oh, they just heard it.
What's that? Oh, they just heard it.
Just heard it.
Fine. Okay. So, look, we're in the heart of Texas. We're in the heart of the Dallas Cowboys. I would say to you guys, people have asked me in my investing career, I've been doing this for 30 years, and people have said to me, who are your inspirations? What are the things that were sort of transformative for you? And inevitably, it's always these guys at the top of the list. And, I have my 16-year-old daughter with me here, who's on break from boarding school. And she said to me, Dad, what's this going to be about today? And, I thought for a minute instead of just giving her the normal answer. And I said, well, actually, it's a Harvard Business School case study on, a family business, entrepreneurialism, and the business of sports. And that's really what I hope you guys get out of this today. And these are the ultimate professors. So let me. I actually wanted to read this to you guys. I wrote this down. Let me give you some stats that puts some metrics to the video you just saw. So, this family bought the Dallas Cowboys for $140 million in 1989. And most recently, Forbes valued it at $9.2 billion, making it the most valuable sports franchise in the world. The Cowboys are ranked first in average home attendance every year since the opening of AT&T Stadium in 2009. It's the highest corporate sponsorship revenue of any team in the NFL for the past 15 years. It has led the NFL in viewership last season, averaging over 25 million viewers per game. It registered the most watched game of the regular season on Thanksgiving Day with 42 million viewers. And as you guys know, AT&T Stadium is the #1 revenue-generating stadium in the U.S., and it's going to host the upcoming World Cup. And the Cowboys' new world headquarters, the Star in Frisco, is truly a state-of-the-art, world-class, over 90-acre, $1.5 billion mixed-use development, and also home of the PGA. So where I wanted to kick off with Charlotte and Stephen is take us back to 1989. Right? And you were a year out of college, Charlotte, and tell me what it was like back then when your father, Gerry, had the guts to go do something that everyone at the time said, you're crazy. Why would you do that?
Well, you mentioned it a little bit, but at that time, the Dallas Cowboys were losing $75,000 a day, over $1.5 million a month. The team was 3-13. With really a string of preceding seasons that were failures. The stadium was half full. And on top of that, 17% of the Dallas Cowboys was owned by the FDIC. We really were America's team, like at that time. And it was a mess. It was a mess. That was the reason why they were for sale at that time. Dallas was in a savings and loan crisis. All the buildings in Dallas were half empty. Everything was really destitute in Dallas, and there weren't a lot of people standing in line to make an investment into the Dallas Cowboys. And as a matter of fact, our father couldn't actually get any of his financial guidance that was encouraging him to do that. So he really turned to the only people that would say yes to him, and that was Stephen, my mom, and me and Gerry. And for us, I was actually in Washington, D.C. at the time working on Capitol Hill. Our younger brother was at Georgetown. Stephen was in oil and gas business, already working for Dad. And Dad flew up to see my younger brother and I and said, look, I'm gonna do this deal. I wanna buy the Cowboys. And what do you tell somebody when something looks like a disaster? Go get them. It's like, what do you do? But he had such a passion and had always wanted to be involved in the National Football League, and to have an opportunity to get involved and to become part of the Dallas Cowboys was something he was not going to let pass him by. And sure enough, at that moment, my dad is known to be kind of like an overestimator of all these things that are so great. And he said, probably the only time he's ever underestimated anything that he's ever said to us, he said, if I do this, it just might change our life a little. And off he went, to go by the Cowboys. And, it has been definitely life-changing and an incredible ride, but probably most importantly, it's been an amazing family journey.
The only thing I would add is, the interesting thing to me, I was young, I was a chemical engineer in the oil business, but I'd played football at Arkansas, so, for him to ask me, I said, of course, this sounds great, better than looking at logs and doing algorithms on how much a reservoir is going to contain in terms of the natural gas. Shoot, I couldn't wait to come to Dallas. But I did say this, anytime people from Texas or Dallas have to go to Arkansas to find somebody to buy the Dallas Cowboys, you might better be eyes wide open in terms of what you're looking at. But no, in all seriousness, Charlotte said it very well. The big thing with Gerry was right away is we have to get this thing on sound economic footing. And we had just sold our oil and gas company, and we were in the throes of finishing the business up in terms of selling our company. And he literally put every last penny that he had worked so hard for 20 years into the business of the Dallas Cowboys. So as you like to say in Texas Hold'em, we were all in. And so there we went. And the biggest thing of all, as Charlotte said, he's very optimistic. He's very optimistic with us. He's very motivational. He's very inspirational. But hell, we just all rolled up our sleeves. The good news is we were all single, didn't have families. We were rolling up down there, and all we had to focus on were the Cowboys. And of course, Gerry, as you know, he's a salesman through and through. And the number one thing we started looking for right away was just how do we generate revenue? And of course, the rest is history from there. That's what we've been about. Every step of the way is, to some degree, I guess everybody likes to use the word disruptive. When it comes to certain things, whatever your business platform, whatever it may be. Certainly we were that when it came to generating revenue, whether it be suite revenue, whether it be ticket revenue, sponsorship revenue, new ways to generate sponsorships. I think that was just a word, I think that was coming into vogue at the time.
Yeah,
people would sell a sign at the stadium. They might have a coach's show, but the coaches got the money. And, we just started packaging all that and putting that together. But we knew the number one priority was to get the Cowboys in a sound financial situation, and then things would take care of themselves. But it was exciting times. You wouldn't give anything for it in terms of the experience that Charlotte had, that I had. Ultimately, Gerry got out of school and joined us. And it is a true family business now. Charlotte's children work in the business, mine work in the business, always looking for ways to do things different in terms of the Cowboys.
Yeah, one quick funny story when totally all in the oil and gas days when my parents would go to New York, they'd stay in the beautiful Hemsley Palace Hotel and everything was wonderful. They go back after buying the Cowboys and they're down at the Marriott. And my mother walks in the hotel and walks in the room and takes a little look around and she goes, "You really did put everything we had into the team."
Well, you guys have been, what's so interesting about your journey is not just buying the Dallas Cowboys for $140 million, where a big part of it was in the FDIC and it was losing money. And then you guys turned it around, I think in like under a year, 7-8 months. But what's happened in sports, I've said publicly, this whole thing that's going on right now where sports is an asset class and all this stuff and money now and capitalism has found sports. You guys have been there as the pace car for that journey. So maybe talk a little bit about, the great thing about sports in certain ways is that all sports pretty much are family businesses, right? I've always looked at the NFL as 32 family offices. But, there's a lot of diversity amongst all of that. And the thing that always struck me about you guys is, you are very disciplined and you run this like a business and you always have. And you kind of needed it, but then, you did it when sports was not. When everyone looked at Gerry buying the Cowboys in '89, they're like, what are you doing? And look at you like to say it's foresight, right? But, it's always easy to look back and
Yeah,
say
no, I think it's that old quote, necessity is the mother of invention. When I came a year after Stephen had already been down there, the only instruction my dad gave to me was find a way to stop losing money. And then 2, whatever you do, don't tarnish the star. And I don't know that I really understood what that meant at that time, but in hindsight, you didn't buy like something material. What you had gotten linked to was this incredible brand. And you had to figure out how to innovate because what was happening wasn't working. So you had to figure out how to change. And they don't exactly give you a blue book in the NFL and say, oh, here's how you go run an NFL team. And had they, it would have been wrong because it wasn't working. And so, every opportunity was looked at, or every challenge was looked at through that lens of how do we do that. And I think as we step back and take a look at where sports is today, like Stephen mentioned, it was advertising, it wasn't sponsorship. That was not actually even a word back then. There was not actually a marketing class, like a sports business class in school. So in that, it was, and those sponsorships actually started, those partnerships as barters of, okay, go to the local dry cleaner and exchange, you cleaning the jocks and socks if you'll put your sign up at training camp, and maybe we'll hand out coupons. And so you kind of started with this barter just to kind of cover expenses that then, became such bigger partnerships and such greater exposure. And then, I dare say that we certainly didn't see it coming, that just 3 years later, we'd win the next 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, and then shortly thereafter be recognized as the most valuable brand in sports. That was not the case. And big milestones that our father gets a lot of credit for became around television contracts there, and then the advent of being able to market your own logo. Because when we got into the league, we didn't have the right to the star. Neither did any other team. And so going on that journey, and Stephen can touch on that, but going on that journey to get there were 2 big defining moments in the National Football League of how much were the networks paying to the league, and then what were clubs allowed to actually do with their own marketing rights.
I can touch on that. That was exactly where I was going. Thank you, Charlotte. But always prompt me so well. But in all seriousness, there were 2 major issues with the league when we first got involved with the team. And you would sit in those meetings, and you look back on it now, and you see the gentleman who joined the room. And it's overwhelming to walk in a room of 31 people, and you're the first, it's the first time you walk in that room, and you feel like you don't really know what's going on. But for I look back on it and have so much respect for Gerry to have, the conviction to stand up. And the first one was television, national television, and Art Modell, who was just like that with all the networks. And back then you only, you had your 3 channels, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and that's who paid you. And, they made it very clear to Gerry, the last thing we want to do is upset these guys. And then at a time where we came in, and as Charlotte mentioned, we were losing money, Gerry stood up and convinced 8 people at the time, there were only 28 teams, to vote against giving the networks back and some money, giving them a refund. And so Art was just beside himself. And of course, you had Commissioner Goodell, and they looked at us and said, boy, if you think you know so much, we'll see what happens. Well, lo and behold, you roll the clock forward. We didn't give them a rebate, and it doubled. The TV contract doubled. And of course, we were so motivated, Gerry was so motivated, because we were, as Charlotte said, really losing a lot of money, and we were trying to get foundationally strong economically. And for him to go in there and be able to convince 10 people, I think it was actually 10 people he convinced to not give the money back, and then to wake up and have a new partner at the table in Fox, which ended up coming to the table at the next negotiation. And the TV rights actually doubled on top of the fact that we didn't give a rebate. I think the other thing was sponsorship. And we were we were getting involved in sponsorship, the league was getting involved in sponsorship, and the league had this thought process that all 32 teams and the league should have the same category sponsors. So rather than having Cowboys be Pepsi and the league be Coke, they thought once the league was Coke, everybody had to be Coke. Well, if Coke went and did a deal with the league, you can imagine the leverage that they would have with the teams. And same thing held for Budweiser. If Budweiser was the league sponsor, then you couldn't do Miller Coors today. And so we were able to convince owners in the room at that time, and it was very divisive in terms of what they should do. And Gerry was able to convince the ownership at that time that we would be better off as a league to let the teams be able to make their own deals, and then that would leave leverage for the league. And you know, it turns out it's worked like a charm. They've never gone back to the old model. It's worked out great. A lot of times the league's opposite of what we are, but it sure gives the teams lots of leverage to go out and be creative and look for categories where they can be successful.
Yeah, and you know, it didn't come without some heartache, because when we brought, it was Nike that was actually the company that we were bringing into the sideline, and the league totally controlled that. And we came out at a game with Phil Knight and Gerry both in tennis shoes. We covered every logo on our players. At the time it was Starter, and we covered that. The league mandated that. They had filled in Al Michaels, who was broadcasting the game, about what was happening. And all we had sold Nike was the right to advertise in the stadium. He has a famous quote for saying, "I've never paid so much for so little in all of my life." And there they walk out. It becomes a big deal. The next day, the league sues us for over $300 million. And you remember, we paid $140 for the team. So they sue us for $300 million. Then a week later, we sued them back for $700 million. And on went the fight. And my father went up to they called a special meeting, of course, as you can imagine. My dad went into the room. Paul Tagliabue said, "You have to leave the room. We're going to talk about this lawsuit." And he said, "I just have one thing to say to this group of owners. Because if you win this lawsuit, most of you don't even know what you're fighting for. Because what he was fighting for is for every owner to have their own logo. It's like, most of you don't even know what you're suing me for. But if you win, I know you will take my team, because I won't be able to pay you, and you'll take the Dallas Cowboys back. But if I win, I'm going to come back and collect every penny of $700 million from each one of you in here." 2 weeks later, they settled the lawsuit. Every team in the league got their mark and logo back, and that started the growth.
By the way, tears were running down his cheek as he said that. He was very emotional.
Look, I got to tell you, it's easy today to hear that story and say, well, of course. But what you have to really do is transport yourself back 35 years ago, and in that context, to what your father did and what your family ended up doing, really, as I said, was the pace car for what has become this juggernaut known as the NFL. I mean, everyone has always talked about, at least in my career, content being king. Well, I think you guys have proved that. I mean, of the top 100 shows on television last year, 93 were NFL games, right? And so that's phenomenal when you think about, and a lot of people have said that Fox became what it became because of what you guys did with the NFL and the media.
Yeah, there was no Fox.
Right?
Yep, there was no Fox.
So, I think now it's interesting, again, you're a family and a family business. Where do you go from here? You went from that story to today, where I think you did an $11 billion media deal that sets you up now for the go forward. But now as you guys are firmly involved in the business, where do you guys? How are you thinking about how to evolve to the next stage?
Gerry, one thing that was interesting, as we've evolved with this, and you get new ownership in the room, and by the way, it just keeps getting better because the price goes up. And so you're bringing all this ownership. Certainly Josh Harris with the Commanders is, obviously a very, very smart man, and somebody who's done really well, and will bring some resources and ideas to the table that we've never seen before. But, I think what's really driven our family and Gerry in my mind is just his passion to want to be involved in it, and to want to be on the sideline, and to want to pick the quarterback, to want to pick the coach, to just absolutely have a passion for the Dallas Cowboys. We once had an owner, and I won't name him, step up and say, you know, Jerry, this was 20 years later, and we were having this argument over revenue sharing, which is when a team gets too high, they think at some point, because you're outpacing others, and we pay the players based on a percentage of the total revenue, they said, you're adding cost to our players, so you should share the revenue. And of course, we had that tit for tat, but we were able to move through that, and it ultimately didn't happen, which I think is outstanding because our league is predicated on sharing. And we share all of our national television revenue, unlike most leagues. Jerry, you were very involved with YES, and you know the Yankees keep all their media revenue. Well, that's not the case in the NFL, so we already share 80% of our revenue. And our point was, at some point, if you don't motivate somebody to go out and generate revenue, then it's not going to happen. If you're just sharing everything, then maybe we should go focus our energy on the real estate business, the oil and gas business, whatever widget business, whatever business it may be. But because we hadn't done that, we've been very motivated to grow the pie, which I think is what has really grown the valuations of this team. But we had an owner actually look across the room at Jerry one day and say, you know, Jerry, we don't want to go down on the sideline and shake hands with all the sponsors. We don't want to have to entertain them and their families in our suite. We don't want to have to go speak to Miller Coors drivers at 6 in the morning to motivate them to go get the point of sale material out at the retail store. We don't want to do all that. You may want to do it, but we don't. Why don't you put all your energy back into the oil and gas business, the real estate business, take you and your family and do that, and let us all enjoy these teams. We all know how to run our other businesses. And of course, Jerry said, that's just not what I want to do. And at the end of the day, you had enough support from people that they too understood that we were growing the value of their teams as well. And guess what happens? They eventually do it. They eventually jump on. They eventually build. You know, I beg to say, you know, forever a big stadium. I think one of the last of the older ones was the Commander Stadium. And of course, it struggles mightily. I mean, Josh Harris was just in front of the stadium committee, which I'm on, and saying, boy, I just didn't realize how tough it was until I went and saw you guys' stadium. So he's in the middle of building a stadium. But certainly that drives to me value with the networks. And I would say that if we didn't build these state-of-the-art stadiums like AT&T, that you wouldn't see the great stadiums you see at SoFi in LA, the great Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. If you don't set that bar high, then people won't come to it. And I just think these buildings are amazing that our fans get to be a part of. I think they enjoy coming. We all know it takes a lot to get to come. I think Jerry likes to use this, the stat that only about 10% of our fans actually have ever been to a game, one game. So it's imperative that we make the experience at these stadiums amazing. And I do think it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's the Coliseum for our networks, for our streamers to go there and bring our content back to our fans.
You know, I just want to pull on that thread a bit. I met your father almost 2 decades ago, and it went back. It started with a media discussion, right? And I think at the time, the league was looking at the NFL Network and what can they do on the media front. And so he and I started talking about, well, you know, I was very involved with the Yankees at the time, and I said to your dad, I said, you know, I was at Goldman Sachs, and I said, you know, I would leave Goldman Sachs if you could figure out a way to merge the Yankees, the Cowboys, and the Lakers. I said, because if you
That'd be a nice gig,
right?
wouldn't it?
I said, because if you did that, you'd have Disney. And this was 2007. And so your father, you know, and I was just getting to know your dad, but he honed right in on that. And he was like, all right, let's pull on that, right? And let's go figure this thing out. And what we ultimately came up with was this idea that if the model around the YES Network with the Yankees was to find a way to capitalize the intellectual property of the New York Yankees and put a multiple on it, then, you know, the Cowboys were building their state-of-the-art stadium at the same time that the Yankees were building their new stadium. So basically said, well, why don't we find a way to capitalize the intellectual property of these two stadiums and find a way to put a multiple on it? And that was Legends Hospitality.
You know, he still looks at that today as how we paid for AT&T Stadium. I mean, we took what you used to get, which was a concession deal or you do it yourself. in terms of selling the hot dogs, the beer, all that. And we went with Jerry's idea of, hey, the Yankees are building a brand new stadium. Let's start with that as the platform, and therein lies Legends today. Now, I can tell you Legends has been very financially viable, not only for the Yankees, but for the Cowboys and for Goldman. Jerry, you brought great value to Goldman. But we look at that as what helped pay for AT&T Stadium. And not the fact that we get a commission for selling hot dogs and beer and margaritas and selling all the suites, their food. They do it at a high level. You have to do that. But certainly that's how Legends got its start. Then Legends evolved into a bigger platform, which is basically building venues and selling their premiums, their seats, their suites, their sponsorships. Also advising them in terms of what type of marketing opportunities they should have in their stadium. Should they have LEDs? Should they have center hung scoreboards? Should they have beautiful boards in the ceiling? What should you have? I mean, that's what Legends does. Now, certainly they have great competitors out there who do a great job in their own right, but we compete with them. But it's created a feeding ground, if you will, for really bringing up the experience for the fans. And, Tennessee built a beautiful stadium in Nashville. Well, guess what? They're replacing it with even a better one. And they were, they weren't quite the new age model, if you will, but they were, somewhere between the old age and the new age. But there they go, because their fans want that, expect that, and I'm sure what they're going to build is amazing. Not unlike Stan did, with his stadium in LA. But there's opportunities out there that you got to look for. I don't even think I could spell blockchain before 2 or 3 years ago. Now they're one of our top 5 sponsors for the Cowboys. So there's always up and coming businesses, technologies that you have to be looking for to grow the pie. And certainly Jerry was an innovator and brought that to us in terms of Legends and what that could do for our business.
So I said this to you the other day, Charlotte, that I thought I knew your dad in the early days, but I didn't really know him until you opened up what became AT&T Stadium, and you guys invited me to a Saturday morning at the stadium, and I think it was like 8:30 in the morning, and Jerry is in this auditorium, and I'm telling you, I mean, it went all the way back. It wasn't, I mean, it was hundreds of people, and Jerry was giving an hours-long presentation to all the Miller beer distributors. And it was like they were all his best friends, and it was genuine, and he was totally into it. And that's when I started to figure you guys out. And it's almost like what you talked about. You have to have that passion. It has to be legitimate, otherwise people will sense it otherwise.
And what his original idea when he bought the team was that I'm going to have to go buy another company like Miller Beer that sells beer or sells a widget, whatever it is, and then attach it to the affinity of the Cowboys so that all of that can make money over here to come back and pay for the team. So he never thought in the early days that the team would actually be revenue generating, as much as he thought, I'm going to use that team to generate revenue over here. So it was that same philosophy that then he taught every one of us, or infused in all of us. It's like, go to bed at night thinking you're Miller Beer and how do you use the Dallas Cowboys, and come back with ways that you can go sell beer. So, every night you're going back, got to sell Pepsi today, got to sell Miller today, got to sell this today. And that got everybody in that mindset, and that became really the ethos of our organization, of anyone that touched it. It's like, think like them and over-deliver on what their association is with us.
I think that's well said. I think I think that's why we keep our partners exclusively for so long. We've never changed beer from Miller Lite. We've never changed Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, Ford, AT&T. I mean, for 35 years, we've been involved in this business, and we've never had one of those major foundational type partners that we're talking about here. We've never had to switch over because they always re-up out in front, because they don't want to go back to the table and compete against their natural competitors, a Coke, a Bud, a Chevrolet, whoever that may be. And I think what Charlotte said is just spot on. I mean, he challenges their CEOs. He challenges the owner of the distributorships for the beer. just say, hey, just put yourself in my shoes, and if you own the Cowboys, how would you sell the beer, as Charlotte said. And I just think it's so critical that you keep, and we feel like it's so important to keep those sponsors the same if they will, obviously step up and have the same vision that we do. Now, sometimes they get a little fidgety in their chair when you start telling them what you want for their particular category, but that's all part of it. But I think you're spot on, Charlotte.
Hey, look, I think, in my experience is there's really two types of owners of professional sports teams, and you guys are the owners who really own your relationship with the fan. I mean, sports was never the multi-billion-dollar industry it is today. I mean, it started out as hobbies for, wealthy guys, and there's a lot of middlemen between ownership and the fans. And I've always found with you guys, one of your great strengths is that you really take that relationship with your customer seriously. And it's fascinating to me because I do invest in other industries, not just sports, and that gives me a perspective like you have with in the oil and gas industry where, some of the things that goes on in sports you wouldn't do in another industry. Like the notion of another industry outsourcing the ownership of their customer to somebody else is almost anathema, and yet that happens all the time in sports. And so I think one of the hallmarks of you guys is that ownership of your most important relationship.
Well, I think we've always known that we don't have shareholders to deliver a bottom line result to. We have fans to deliver an experience to. And in that, how do you make that experience as authentic as you possibly can? And what is your differentiator? You understand the significance of the brand that you're engaged in. And it's like most brands, Roy Disney used to say that a brand is something that you do to a cow. So one farmer can tell one cow away from the other cow, but the product, the cow, is basically the same. Well, we've never felt like we were the same as any other football team or any other sports team. We felt like we were different and that we had our own culture, we had our own identity, and that people gravitated to us because of who we were authentically. And that meant not just the good and the win, it meant the bad and the ugly. It was everything, that their emotion is wrapped up in all of that. And so to be able to identify with that and how we reach out, people are smart. They see authenticity and then they see, shiny things that don't actually really connect. And I think because that has always been his ethos of connecting directly to you, that we do that in everything we do.
Yep.
Trying to establish that
100%.
true connection.
Look, people at the end of the day want a value proposition, and I think as owners, that's ultimately what creates value, is that you're delivering a great value proposition. You constantly re-underwrite for your customer, your fan, and you guys have done that so well. Let me ask you something, Charlotte. So your father said to you when you first bought the Cowboys, whatever you do, don't tarnish the star. Yeah. Right. So what does that mean to you today? What is the star today?
For me, and I think really for all of us, it's like understanding that it's so much bigger. It's so much bigger than any one player. It's so much bigger than any one person, any one team. That it is generations of teams and culture. And for us, our organization is really, it's founded on very significant things that we can never lose sight of. And the first is tradition. Dad wanted to be involved in the Dallas Cowboys because of Roger Staubach and Bob Lilly and, all of these greats that we knew that, those are the ones that you stand on their shoulders and you try to reach new heights. But you also, you love the fact that a grandfather wants to bring his granddaughter to the game and it becomes generational and all of that is wonderful. But you can't get stuck in the generational or you become nostalgic. And you have to figure out ways to stay relevant. For us, that was a little bit like how we found it, that it was a bit nostalgic and wasn't as relevant. On top of that, we understand that the game, it's really about competition. So we're the greatest reality show out there. You can't fake it, you can't script it, you can't predict it, you have no idea what's gonna happen on Sunday. And in all of that lies like the true value of that. And sports purists, they only wanna win. They don't care about anything else. So you've gotta be reminded that it really is, that is the heart and soul of the game, is the competition. The other part of it is that it is entertainment. And we know that we are a respite for our fans. They want to leave their problems at home, their struggles of the day, and they want to come out to that game and cheer for something. Have a unified experience with people that don't look like them, but they're all gonna like high five, or they're all gonna yell at you at the end of the day because they're so passionate about what they do. Plus, they have exerted their last dollar to be there with you. So if you don't give them an experience that they can cherish and want to share, one of our major TV executives once said that the greatest thing about watching our game on television is wishing you were there. So in that, how do you kind of jump on that, honor it, and capitalize on it, and have that experience that they'll never forget? Because at the end of the day, our biggest competition is not actually the Commanders. It is our biggest partner, which is the networks. Because people can sit home and they're lazy boy and have an incredible experience now and watch that game. So how do you get them into the stadium and deliver that experience? But the other thing is about a business. I mean, it has to drop to the bottom line, or you can't build the stadium, you can't fill the team. There's no juice to come back around and make it go again if you don't focus on the business of it, but remember that your fans don't really want to hear about the business. But I think the separator for us is that we've also felt that it's about innovation. And not to change just for change's sake, but how do you adapt and change and see opportunity for the future so you take your fans on that ride into the future.
I will say this, Charlotte, you were in the meeting. I think David Hill and Mr. Murdoch came down, and it was right before one of the Super Bowls, and I think one of our players, a famous one, Michael Irvin and Eric Williams, had gotten in a little trouble. So we went in the room, meekish. He said, "Oh, I know you're going to scold us. Our players are creating headlines for the wrong reasons. We're cleaning that up. You got my word." This is Gerry talking to David Hill and Rupert. They go, "Oh, Gerry," and that Australian brogue said, "Oh, Gerry, don't clean it up too much. The fans like controversy and adversity." He goes, "You got to keep a little of that in it." So anyway, there is a little bit of that, but Charlotte, of course, rolls her eyes when she hears something like that. But they like that part of it too, when there's going to be a little bumpy road or two along the way. But that was comical at the time.
So unfortunately, Gerry's never forgot it. He likes to keep it all stirred up and messy.
Well, talking about the players, you guys have had a history of forming really long-lasting relationships with your players. It's somewhat unique, right? I mean, it's always a tough balance. Talk a little bit about that, and particularly in the world today where the players themselves are now becoming really, much more.
They're their own brand.
Exactly.
It's the way they look at it.
Right.
I'm sure Dak would talk about his brand. I'm sure Micah will talk about his brand. They come to Charlotte for advice on branding, and she gives it to them. But one of the things that happens when you have these great players, and it's not just great, some of them are guys you probably wouldn't remember. Larry Brown, players that are, maybe had their moment or two, but, a lot of them like to stay connected. But the thing we find as a family, Gerry, myself, Charlotte, my brother, is when players come through and they play the sport football, which is so rough. The TV does a great job of showing how hard these guys hit each other. And, Charlotte serves on the player health and safety. I'm on the competition committee. We're always trying to keep these players safe so they can have a great life after football. But what happens is you have so much respect and love watching them go out and lay it on the line for you, trying to win a championship for you. In the 90s, we're fortunate that right off the bat we were able to win 3 Super Bowls. We also find that our fans have a connection to them as well, and it's great to have them around. But the bigger thing we like to do is mentor them and get them off and running. You see a lot of ex-Cowboy players that are on TV. Tony Romo, Jason Witten had his stint. It's just great. DeMarcus Ware, you see him in and out of different things, and he's just these men are sharp men. Daryl Johnston, of course, running I think a league you're involved with, Gerry, and just they're sharp people, but they're also people that you just have love for, and you want to root for them, you want to do good with them, and that's important to us, that they know they have a place they can come. They can come out to the Star, and we'll figure out how to get them involved. We have, Charlotte, you might hit on it, an ambassadors program where they're involved on game day, but we just have a lot of respect for what they did for us in terms of laying it on the line, leaving it on the field, and the fact that they care enough to want to come back and continue to cement, their image, their brand, if you will, with the Cowboys. But Charlie, you might hit on some of the things.
Well, and I think our relationship goes deeper than the game and deeper than work. It becomes very personal, and I think as they approach all of us in different ways of just needing advice, needing family advice, needing business advice. Of course, for their own opportunities, needing to help a brother. There's a lot of life that happens, and when you get into something that is really so challenging, you turn inward, and we are a very visible team, and when things are great, they're never greater. When they are not great, they are really not great, and so you turn inward to those you can trust, and that becomes our team and our family and our organization turns together, because you face a lot of criticism in that process. And when you go through difficult times together, you form unique relationships. And I think we can talk for days about what they look like. Sometimes they name them after us. I think Tony Romo's third son's named Jonesy. So it's like, okay, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but now he owns it, so that's great. But all of that, when DeMarcus Ware was trying to adopt a baby, we helped him through that process. I mean, there's just a lot of unique ways, but I think it also is just a reflection of how passionate we are about what we do. It is not work for us. This is life for us.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the one thing you guys have been great at is looking at all the constituents in the whole ecosystem and the value chain and enhancing those relationships. I think the player relationship is something that's going to evolve in sports.
Yes.
I mean, the players now have a seat at the economic table in golf. And I think you guys, as usual, you guys will be out in front in a pace car and sort of that evolving relationship. Let's talk about evolution for a second. So you bought the Cowboys, you went through the whole media phase, you guys then turned your eyes to monetizing the live event. You created Legends, you opened your new stadium. Fast forward to today, when your father asked you, or said to you, don't tarnish the star, I bet he never thought about a $1.5 billion mixed-use development in Frisco. And so you've now taken...
Star.
Yes, the Star, right? And
Yeah.
so the Star in today's context is very different than 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Tell everybody about that. And I know we have a video that we can also show.
That you can show so you can get a sense of what it is.
Okay.
I think Stephen and Gerry and I are particularly proud of this project because when we came off building the stadium, and you go back to your old practice facility, Valley Ranch, you realize how old your practice facility is, and you think, we need something shiny and new. A lot of work was done, particularly on Stephen's part, to figure out where the next location would be for our headquarters. But on top of that, we realized that we had an opportunity to do something very different. And for us, that meant we built this beautiful stadium for $1.2 billion, and we're only there 10 days a year. So where are we the other 355 days a year? And how can we make our brand evergreen and that experience evergreen? And if fans are that authentic and want to connect with us, then let's let them connect in every way possible. This is where we live, this is where we work, this is where we play, this is where we eat. And if that could come off in a setting and we could build that, then we could have something truly special. I think the unique thing about this project is that when the opportunity came along, the city of Frisco, where this actually sits, is incredible, valuable real estate. And Stephen will kind of talk to that in a minute. But the opportunity was that we could actually partner with Frisco and high school football. So if we could be intrinsically linked to the heartbeat of our sport, which was high school football, then we really had something authentic and we really had a way to connect with people in our sport beyond what we could have ever possibly imagined. So for us, this indoor practice facility is Frisco High School's stadium of 9 high schools. So this 12,000 seat arena, this is where we practice. So imagine Dak Prescott finishing his last pass and the high school quarterback coming out, shaking hands and starting his practice. And so the whole idea, if you talk to players, professional players, their greatest heydays were in high school. And so literally the offices, the meeting rooms for our players are right behind the wall, and they go out on Friday nights and stand on the sideline and watch Friday Night Lights right there almost every night when they're there. So for us, the unique thing here is that when we came up with this idea, our father said, I'm done taking risks. I'm done dancing with the devil. I did it when I bought the team. I did it when we built the stadium. You can go do it, but you have no money from me, and I'm not going with you. So.
Well, no, Charlotte says that very well in terms of his thought process on a practice facility. He's very content to play it out at Old Valley Ranch, if you will, and he said they'll be great. He said coaches can coach anywhere and players can play anywhere as well. I will say this, we've been a little topic of conversation amongst some ex-players that we're soft and we got a country club atmosphere going on, and that's why we can't win a damn playoff game. So there's some of that to it. But no, at the end of the day, I think one of Gerry, you mentioned when we first bought the team, let's leave this organization in a better place than where we found it. And we've been very fortunate. We've won 3 Super Bowls, as you mentioned, AT&T Stadium. We ended up starting with a $750 million budget and ended up at $1.25 billion. I can tell you every step of the way, because you ask what Gerry's like to work with, it's all about a return. And when we went over $500 million, everything was tied to revenue and very, frothy type returns in terms of what we would ultimately do with AT&T Stadium. The same thing held for this. All we had ever seen when we sat in a meeting room in the NFL was, hey, these things cost $80 to $120 million and they're practice facilities. He said, not while I'm alive. We're not going to do that. Right. So sure enough, our family is in the real estate business. We've really made our way in the real estate business in Frisco, Prosper, Salina. North Texas is a really, if you know real estate, is a really hot market. And so a lot of people didn't think there'd be a place to park a facility there. But as Charlotte said, Frisco was innovative. They wanted their athletes to have the best. Their high school athletes, it may be misplaced, but it does drive people to Highland Park to get to play for Randy Allen, to Frisco, to McKinney, where they have a beautiful, I think, $60 or $70 million stadium. But Frisco gave us $100 million head start on something, on what I would call one of the blue chip pieces of property in all of North Texas. And so met with our real estate team, and we said, if we can't make something of this, I mean, this piece of property would have been successful for sure if the Cowboys weren't there. I mean, there would have had office buildings, it would have been mixed use, it would have been multifamily, and people in the real estate business would have done really well. What we always strive with the Cowboys when we do put the brand on it and do it the right way is we want 1 + 1 to be 3. We want it to be accretive, additive, whatever you want to call it. And we felt like we could do that by putting our practice facility here, as you see it. It's branded in a big way. I mean, everywhere you turn out there, you feel Cowboys, you feel competition. And we were able to, and we didn't come up with it overnight. It was a lot of meetings, Charlotte, my brother, Gerry, our real estate folks, a lot of smart people. Came up with ideas. And on this development, the Star, we have a high-rise luxury living that we did with Roger Staubach, speaking of doing with your ex-players, and Robert Shaw, who was Roger's center. And we did a luxury living place that Charlotte was very involved in the design. But we have retail, 200,000 square feet of retail. We'll end up with well over a couple million square feet of office. I think we're up to $2 billion now in terms of the revenue that's been put into infrastructure out here. But it's really exploded in terms of what we do there. To give you an idea, it's not for everybody. We had a medical company that looked at this site, and when it was all said and done, the brokers came back just sheepish. They go, well, we lost them down the road. They were moving from California, and they said most of their employees were Rams fans, 49ers fans, and Chargers fans. And I said, well, we'll lose a couple of those. But about 2 weeks later, we replaced them with KDP, Keurig Dr. Pepper, right, and for a better deal. Right. But overall, this thing, we've been able to get the highest rents in retail and office, whatever you want to look at in terms of, a barometer in terms of what you should be getting. if you buy into competition, if you buy into this, then this star has just been fantastic. Actually, Charlotte's son, my son, played high school football out there. My son was lucky enough to win 2 state championships, and he played 6 of the games in that building and the other 6 in AT&T Stadium. Charlotte's son won a state championship, so it's just been fun in terms of putting this together. But it's also been something that's brought a lot of value, I think, to our fans as well as the business community.
You know, and I will say this, you know, we keep saying it is about the bottom line, but the stadium, you know, could have been built for $700 million. We spent 1.2, and that was for the wow factor. That was for the big video board, that was for the glass, that was for the attention that would come with it. So we over-invested in quality in the stadium. And then when we came out here to Frisco, it was the same way. The city gave us $100 million. We spent $1.3 billion more out here than we even did at the stadium. And that too was to create something that people would want to go see. So the over-investing in our fan experience is really paid off for us in the long run.
Well, I mean, they say sports in certain ways is a partnership with real estate. It's a partnership with live music. You guys really have shown that with this development. I mean, you basically built a town. And the derivative benefits of that to the community is staggering.
One of the things we skipped over, Charlotte, is we also have a big medical facility here.
Right.
Just about
So
to say
for health and wellness for the players, our players go over there to get their MRIs. They had their knee surgeries there, and guess what? The high school quarterback at Frisco, if he hurts his shoulder or back, he goes where Tony Romo got his back or shoulder fixed. And so it's really been a very additive to the Frisco community in terms of bringing that particular piece, a medical office building, to fruition there. You have a training center there where a lot of the high school athletes actually have professional training. So it's been a unique piece to the puzzle as well.
Yeah, so, you know, the approach was very strategic. Hit the things that you're most concerned about your future. And first was the youth. How do we hang on to fans for the future? The second was the safety of our players. Frisco, too, wanted to be the safest place to play youth sports, and we wanted to make sure that we were addressing that. So the partnership with Baylor Scott & White is about prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of concussion. And so that was very important. And then us was, how do you become evergreen? How are you relevant 365 days a year? And we felt like we were doing that in this space. So all of it together. Now, I will say this, we did agreed on the handshake, and the city said we want to be playing football in 3 years. We didn't have a contract papered. We certainly didn't have an idea. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have anything, and it needed to be completed in 3 years. So I don't necessarily advise that direction.
But we did it.
But we did it. We did it, and everything continues to blossom from that. And we also have a hotel partner out there with the Omni, which is awesome.
I think that's one of the key things, too, when you're dealing with municipalities. We're fortunate in North Texas because it creates competition amongst the municipalities. So Irving wanted the stadium. Irving wanted the practice facility. Arlington wanted one, wanted a stadium. Then they wanted to keep the practice facility. But I think one of the things that I would encourage all sports teams to do when you are dealing with the municipalities, and they are your partner, which is a huge, huge part of making the economics work to your satisfaction, is that you do what you say you're going to do. Because these guys, they're not participating financially. The city is from you create a great tax base for their citizens. But at the end of the day, the guys who are making the decision and betting on you are betting that you deliver a product that you said you would deliver, and do it in a timely fashion. So important. And then if you do that, and you stack another one and you do it, and you stack another one and you do it, then you start to get the confidence and credibility of any of the municipalities you have in an area like North Texas. I always, tell our ownership groups that when they're going to get involved with building a practice facility or a stadium, is it's an obvious thing, but it's, it can be easier said than done sometimes, but that's certainly important.
Just in the last few minutes, I just want to touch on the next thing that you guys are going to pioneer. So probably the most sought after documentary in sports has been the story that you just heard here today. And the NFL cut a pretty groundbreaking deal with Skydance Media, Larry and David Ellison's production company, does Top Gun, Mission Impossible, and one of the real first marquee project is the documentary on the Dallas Cowboys. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, thanks to you, Gerry, bringing David Ellison to us down at our golf tournament. But for years, probably for a decade, we had been approached by many, including NFL Films themselves, of we need to do a documentary about the Cowboys, about Jerry's tenure, about the 90s, about all of that. And for years we had said no, and mainly because we felt like that football story had been told. That there's a football life, there's a 30 for 30, we need a partner. Think we have a better story to tell than what they're after. And so we turned down a lot of people, and then along came David Ellison. And David truly understood what we were trying to say. And I think when you've gone on the journey that we have with our family, I mean, for us, it's an American dream. I mean, this is what it's about. It's the hard work, the chance, the risk, the failure, the discouragement, and then the hope, and then the victory, and the success of that roller coaster. That was what it's set in football, but we really wanted to tell that, and David got that, and he shared that vision. Was a longtime friend or mentor with Steve Jobs. He had great stories to tell about how unique people really characterize what the American dream is really all about, what we have the opportunity to go pursue our passions. Like nowhere in any other country do we have that opportunity to do that. And this will bring that to life. And Netflix was excited to jump on board, and that was a history-making deal. And hopefully it will be as interesting to others as it has been for us.
Well, look, David has an iconic father, just like you guys do. And I think that
Yes,
that was something that helped him really understand the potential of this. Look, we're out of time. I have to say, I thought it was a great discussion. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. You guys truly remain an inspiration to me, and I just so admire you both and your family.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for doing it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.